Hey guys, so today we're going to cover completing the squares of parabolas, both when a equals 1 and when a doesn't equal 1. And I just want to emphasize that when we have different forms of parabolas, the most common ones are its standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals y, and then its vertex form. So that's a parentheses x minus h squared plus k equals y. And the h and k, if you remember from the equation of a circle, that represents a specific point. In this case, this represents the vertex point of the parabola, which is that turning point that we'll see later. So let's take a look at number 1. So here we have the standard form of a quadratic equation, and we see that the a, which is the value or the coefficient of the x squared term, that's 1, so there's no number here. So what do we do in situations like that? Well, we want to get this form to this form. Okay, so let's start off by rewriting the equation with a few changes. So we're going to start off with x squared plus 16x plus, and then I want you to leave a space, plus 71 minus, and then leave a space. And what these spaces represent is going to represent is the number that is going to help us factor later on to get to this form. And the reason why I have a plus and minus version of that same number is because when I add those two numbers together, because they're going to be the same, they're going to give me 0, which overall doesn't affect the value of the equation, but just how it looks. And that's the main point. So next question is, how do I get this number? Well, you're going to take the b term, and you're going to divide it by 2 and square it. So our b term is 16 divided by 2, well, that's 8 squared, and that'll give us 64. So what you're going to do is you're going to write 64 here and 64 here. And again, these are supposed to cancel out to 0. So next step is we want to factor the first 3 terms, and then we just combine the last 2 terms. So I'm actually just going to put this in parentheses, plus 16x plus 64, and then I'm going to combine these two constants, which is going to give me 7. And now you're factoring this part. So there's 2 ways to factor at this point. You can just factor normally by creating 2 bubbles, or you can use the box method. So I'm going to create the 2 bubbles here. And I'm going to say, well, okay, I'm in this situation. Well, what 2 numbers gives me 64 but adds to 16? It turns out that it's this value here, this b divided by 2 value. 8 times 8 is 64, and 8 plus 8 is 16. So we can just write 8 plus 8 here, and then x plus 8 here, and then x plus 8 here. And we see that they're 2 of the same factors, so we're going to keep this in mind when we continue working with these types of problems. So if I continue that, I end up with x plus 8 squared, since there's 2 of them, plus 7, and that is my vertex form of my quadratic equation from standard to vertex. And how can I plot the vertex point? Well, the vertex point is going to rely on the h and k of the problem. So I have a positive 8 here, but I had originally a negative h in the vertex form, so this needs to be the opposite sign, so that's going to be negative 8. And then this is going to be the same sign, it's going to be 7. And if you want to verify that this is the vertex point, what you can do is you can go into your graphing calculator, type in the equation, you have x squared, and you can type in either version at this point, plus 71. If you go to the table, if we look at where x is negative 8 and y is 7, we see that the coordinates above them repeat. You know, we have the y values above them repeat. So on the left side we have 8, 11, 16. On the right side we have 8, 11, 16. So that's a good thing because parabolas are symmetrical across their vertex point. So okay, cool. Now for those of you who struggle with this method, you can factor using the box method, and how that would look like is you would just draw a box. You would put x squared here and 64 here, and then you would try and figure out, well, let's see, 1 times 64, that's just 64. And then you try and figure out what factors of 64 add to 16. Well, that ends up being 8 and 8. So you end up with 8x here, 8x here, x plus 8 here, x plus 8 here. And the reason why I got that is, well, what times x, what gives me x squared? Well, that's x and x. What times x gives me 8x? No, that's just 8. Same thing here, and again, it repeats, and it's supposed to in this case. So let's go into the situation where we don't have 1 as our coefficient. We have a different number. So that problem is going to be the following. We're going to start off with 2, and that's going to be y equals 2 x squared plus 36x plus 170. So again, you want to start off in the same way until you get comfortable with this. Then you can start off however you want. So I'm going to write 2x squared plus 36x plus, and then I leave a space, plus 170 minus, and then I leave another space. Okay? So the difference between approaching this problem and approaching this problem is that we want our x squared term not to have a coefficient in front of it, or a coefficient of 1 in front of it, because when we try and get it to the vertex form, it has no coefficient directly in front of it. It has a parenthesis separating it. So what should we do with that coefficient? Well, we need to factor it out. So again, we're only focusing on the first 3 terms. So we're going to do 2 parentheses, then we end up with x squared plus, and we factor out 2 from this, and that's going to leave us with 18x, and then plus again, we have a factor, plus 170, and then minus whatever that number is going to be. So we go through the same process. Well, what number? 18 is our b, so we're going to do b over 2 squared. That's going to be 18 over 2 squared. That's going to give us 9 squared, and that's 81. So I'm going to put an 81 here, right? And there's an 81 here. But here's the issue. If there was no coefficient out here, then 81 and 81 would cancel out normally. But there's a 2 multiplying this 81. And 2 times 81 isn't going to equal this value. So what should we do to make sure it balances out? Well, we need to multiply this by 2. Okay, and then that will give us the same numbers if we distributed. So let's rewrite this as the following. So it's going to be 2. And again, you want to factor at this point. I would go with the shortcut and realize that I just need to take this b term, this b divided by 2 term, and write x plus 9. X plus 9. Again, it's always going to be the same. Then it's going to be plus, and then we're going to combine, well, actually, let me just rewrite it. So it's 170 minus 162. And let's write that again. So it's going to be 2. We're going to write this as one set of parentheses, so x plus 9 squared. This is going to give me plus 8. And that is the result of my vertex form now. And the vertex point is going to be the opposite sign of this, which is negative 9, 8. And that's pretty much it. So again, you want to take away the fact that when there is a number in front of your leading coefficient, you want to factor it out. So you can proceed the same way as we did with a situation where there was no leading coefficient. And always remember, when you do factor, whatever you're adding and subtracting, you got to multiply by the factor on the outside of the parentheses. And that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below, like and subscribe, and I'll make another video later regarding parabolas. Alright guys, bye!